everybody, welcome back. I'm back making videos again. Yay! Anyway, today I'm showing you this project that was featured in Die Cut Crazy magazine, and this is actually a popcorn holder that you can give to teachers, or you could use it for postal workers, the bank person, the UPS carrier, holidays, whatever, but it's a cute little treat to give to somebody. So this is actually the one I made. I actually made two of these, so the one we're going to make today has different pattern paper. Okay, the first thing you're going to need is a piece of solid colored cardstock, and you're going to cut it at 8.5 by 5 3/4, and then you're going to want to score it at 1/4, 4, 4.5, and 8 1/4. And then you're going to need another piece of pattern paper, and that's going to be cut at 5 1/2. And then your width should be about 8.5 to 9, so it overlaps. But my paper I have is only 8 by 8, so my piece is cut at 5.5 by 8. And then you're also going to need two other pieces for the decoration that goes around. This piece is cut at 2 3/8 by whatever length you want to use, and this piece is 2 1/8, and that way it just overlaps and leaves a little bit on the side. Okay, so this is what you need for the popcorn holder. Now, if you are using a piece of pattern paper that is a little bit shorter, where you're going to have a little bit of a space in the back of it, like here on mine I had a little bit of a gap, I just cut a piece of paper right here. So I've cut a piece of paper, and it's 5 3/4 wide by anywhere from 1/2 to 1 inch, depending on how width of a border there you might have. Alright, so let's get started. So after you've scored your paper, you want to go ahead and get your bone folder or whatever it is you use as your scoring tool to help you get those edges nice and creased. You want to go ahead and crease those edges. So once you have your project all creased, you're going to want to put adhesive on the edge of one of these flaps right here, these two flaps. You want to make sure you use a sturdy adhesive, so I'm going to use Stampin' Up! Sticky Strip, but you could use, other companies make the same tape, just call it something different, but or any kind of adhesive that you really like that sticks pretty good, because you don't want it to fall apart if they slide it in and out. You just run an adhesive along the edge. You want to make sure you go from the edge to edge so you have good coverage. Then you just peel the backing off, which is always easier said than done with this tape. Just like that. And then I'm going to have a little bit of a line, so I'm going to go ahead and fold that backwards. Okay, and then you just adhere your two end flaps together. What I like to do is fold it over, you see there, so it's lined up. It's kind of hard with it being black. And then you just kind of push the other one down over it. Make sure I stay in camera here. That way you kind of ensure that they meet up perfectly in the center. There you go. Okay, so once you have that, it's going to be kind of an oblong shape here, where it's going to be thicker here and thinner here. Now, some people like to work before they would go ahead and decorate and put all the paper on it before they adhere the seam right here. But I actually like to work while the popcorn is in the holder. I just think it's easier, but that's just how it is for me, so it just depends. If you're not like that, you might want to do the next couple steps while the container is still open before you adhere that seam. There we go. You always make sure your popcorn fits in there. The goal is it stays in there, but it can be, you can slide it in and out pretty easy. Okay, so the next step is take your piece of pattern paper. Now I don't score this, pre-score this, because it's not going to lie flat when you pre-score it because of the curves to the packaging. So what I like to do is just kind of eyeball it, line it up, and leave myself like a 1/4 of an inch, no, about an 1/8 of an inch border around the sides there. And then I just kind of work it around the back myself. So what I'll do is I'll put some adhesive. Again, you want to use some pretty decently sturdy adhesive. So I like to use my ATG gun for this, because you want to make sure it's sturdy. Okay, make sure your skinny edge is down. That skinny 1/4 inch border is there. And then you just kind of eyeball it. Make sure you've got your 1/8 of an inch around. Okay. And then I just kind of push it. I work it around the edge myself with my finger, using my finger to kind of lightly score it. Bring it around to the back. And then the same thing at the top here. Just push it around a little bit, make sure it's adhered pretty well. Alright. And then you see I have a little bit of that border, but if you put this paper over it, you'll never know it's there. So if you are using 12 by 12 paper and you cut it down, you'll want to cut it to be about 8.5 to 9 inches so that you can overlap a little bit there on the back. Okay, then you just repeat the same process with your next 2 strips. Same thing, we're going to leave a little 1/8 of an inch border around the edge. So you go ahead and do the same thing with the red piece. This is a piece of Stampin' Up's Real Red. And this is a piece of Stampin' Up Basic Black that I used as the background. Kind of making sure it looks pretty straight. Same thing again, just use your fingers to kind of lightly score it. Make sure it's on there. Okay. And the paper pattern papers that I'm using, that I use on all these popcorn holders I made, are from the Die Cuts with the View Education stack, and I've actually been using this a lot lately for teacher stuff. It's got glitter pages and it's got all different kinds of patterns that are really good for teacher or education type projects. And when you're doing this, you want to make sure you leave about the same length here as here, so that everything kind of meets up in the middle and the back. There we go. Pretty simple, pretty cute. Then on the back, if you have the shorter paper, because this is a good way to use up your smaller pieces of paper, you just run that little seam there along the back with some additional adhesive. just like that. And you're all set. Okay, so now we will go ahead and I'll show you how to decorate. Okay, so now we're going to show you how to decorate it. And when I decorated the front, this is one of the fronts I did on the other one where I have the chalkboard image. And this chalkboard image and the alphabets are from the Lawn Fawn set. A good apple. This is where I got most of the elements. And then for the best wishes, I used the Milo's ABCs to create my sentiment. Okay, so for time's sake, I've already gone ahead and stamped the chalkboard image on a scrap of Neenah Solar White cardstock, and you can see I have other stuff scrapped on it, but you're not going to be able to see the back of it. And then I've stamped the apple, the eraser, and the piece of chalk on a piece of Copic stamping illustration paper. This is real thin, and I like this when you're putting something down that's not going to be 3D. You're not popping up with dimensionals. And then I also stamped the chalkboard again on a piece of black cardstock. It's really hard to see it, but I can see it. And I'll be trimming that out to put into the center of the chalkboard. And I stamped all of these with Memento Tuxedo Black ink, which is what you want to use when you're coloring with Copic markers. And then you also need a piece of pattern paper or whatever you want to use to back the chalkboard with. And that needs to be cut at 2 3/4 by 4. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. Let's go ahead and do our embossing first, I guess. So let me go ahead and cut this out real quick. And since I'm cutting on a piece of black, I actually make a tick mark on the back with a little arrow and a pencil so that I know which part was the up part of the chalkboard so that everything matches up pretty good. Okay, so the first thing we'll do is we'll start to do our embossing, and we'll go ahead and get that. I'm going to put a tiny piece of temporary adhesive on the back here to hold it down. I'm going to use my Stampin' Up! Embossing Buddy static remover so that I don't get white powder all over every other part of the cardstock. Okay, we're going to use some Versamark ink. Okay, I'm going to be right back. I'm going to go ahead and heat set this, and I'll be right back. Now, I wanted to have a comma after the teacher, so I just went ahead and used my white gel pen for that. So I just made a little comma right there, like that. Now, to give it a chalkboard effect, you want to just take some white ink. I'm going to use Stampin' Up's white pigment ink here. Just using my finger. And I just kind of come in from off the edge of the cardstock and I just rub it around with kind of some of the edges here. Just kind of giving it a look like it's been erased a few times, and you know, you get that leftover residue on the chalkboard. Okay, so that's your center of your chalkboard. And now we're going to go ahead and color in the chalkboard. And I'm going to use Copic markers. Alright, so I'm going to take this and add some adhesive to it. Okay, now after your apple is completely dry, you want to make sure it's dry, because if you don't, it'll leak through. But I take a little bit of gel pen, and I just add a little shiny mark there. And then no project is complete without some clear Wink of Stella. Just going to add some of that to the eraser. Plus this kind of ties in with the glitter that are in the pattern papers that we're using. So there you go. There you have your popcorn holder. I hope you enjoyed this video. Be sure to leave a thumbs up. Hopefully no thumbs down. And I'll see you next time, okay? Thanks.